Welcome to Laid Back Law with your favorite lawyers from around the interwebs, discussing the most pressing of topics every Friday at noon Eastern Time.
All right, it appears we are live here. Hopefully there'll be the chats rolling in, and hopefully this launched on YouTube. I don't know if it did. This is a very frustrating situation. I'm using Rumble Studio, and it is live on YouTube. So hopefully everybody will share this out if you don't mind. I am live with Nate. You might notice that the intro has changed. Every week I've had a really fun intro that I cobbled together from way back just before the Kyle Rittenhouse trial or thereabouts with Nick Rekieta and Joe Neerman. Obviously, the headline news of the day is that Nick Rekieta has been arrested, along with his wife and a house guest that they had. It's a very uncomfortable situation. A lot of people have known for a while that there may be some, problems that, Nick might be having some issues. And I have deliberately not spoken about it. Nate and I, we have talked about it on the side and with other friends to try to get help. Correct?
Yeah. So people understand, like, all of our relationships, as a group of lawyers who come to YouTube, and you really don't know the other person on the side of the screen, right? I don't really know who Nick is, right? Sure. I've met him on live streams and that type of thing. And I met him in person once, I think, at Anime Matsuri. I've always had a great time with Nick. Nick has always been a great guy, but you don't know what personal demons they have. And when it comes to this situation, it's weird because you see a lot of people dancing on Nick's grave because, he's built a very interesting cadre of characters who both like and hate Nick. But, for me personally, this is somebody who I knew, who I cared about, who I reached out to when I've had issues, and, he's always been there. And I think a lot of times people kind of have, I like to call them convenient friendships, where as long as things are going good, we're friends. As soon as things are a little bumpy, it's like, I was never really his friend. And you start seeing some people doing that now. But personally, I don't think you jettison your friends at their lowest moments. I just don't think that's the proper time for it. Before he was arrested, I was even telling Eric, I had just called Nick. Not before the actual arrest, but I think maybe a day or two before, just to say, like, hey, listen, I've been seeing these videos, things don't really look too well, are you okay? That type of thing. But he didn't pick up. And we've been seeing everything that everybody else has been saying. But it's really, Nick's a grown person. There's really not too much we can do on our end to, if someone wants to go down that rabbit hole, sometimes they have to hit rock bottom before they can rebound. And I think, unfortunately, that's what happened with Nick.
I agree. I mean, I don't have any good terms for it. I want to be careful to not be hateful and do that. And, Gary Mitchell is saying, can't believe that I changed the intro to remove Nick. I already had made a decision a couple days back to swap up the intro. As I was, briefly mentioning here, it wasn't the idea to remove Nick to disassociate with Nick. I can't wait for Nick to get back. I so much want him to get better. I'm, like Nate said, I'm hoping that this is going to help him overcome whatever demons he has. He's always welcome at any point. The reason why I was going to remove it, and I think I already told Nate about this the other day too, was because there was a really bad stream that happened a couple days ago. And every time I start up Laid Back Law, there'll be people in the chat saying, welfare check on Nick Rekieta. And I didn't want to draw attention to a situation. Now it's impossible to avoid the situation because it's out there. And it's a very frustrating thing to say, but that was my reasoning behind it. That intro could come back, but how does that work really well? They're both obviously drunk in the video. That was a lightweight, fun evening. Nick was having none of these issues that I know way back then. But how is that?
No, but Eric, I understand you're trying to, but I don't think that person understands. Number one, you were decided to change it before this even the whole arrest even happened because of Nick. Because Nick has a drinking problem, and you're opening up the show with Nick being drunk. Obviously, that's not a good look, and obviously, you don't want to promote that because the guy has a problem. It's just be reasonable at that particular point in time. And number two, it's like, don't forget in the intro, he is deliberated, and he's just been arrested on all these charges and things of that nature. So it's got throwing more fuel to the fire. We're not, it's at a point. It's like, is that exploitative? Because he's literally has a problem, and we're showing him in the midst of having that problem. So I think unfortunately, people just. The reality of it is, I'm still cool with Nick. I hope he gets better. We all want him to do well. But all the people who want to criticize anything, we all sat here and watched this man simply implode in real time on live stream. That's just what happened, and it's sad. It's sad, and I just personally, if you'd have asked me 2 years ago, would Nick be going down? I would have said no. Because it's so weird because he was so much success. He had the Rumble deal. He had the because don't forget he was the first one of us to actually have that blow up on the live streams with the Rittenhouse trial. Remember before Johnny Depp, there was Rittenhouse. He blew up with that. Then Johnny Depp obviously blew him up a little bit more, and so we all had those nice little bumps. But I would have, if you'd have asked me, I would have never thought this would have been the outcome. But with that being said, everybody has people, drugs touches everyone's family. My family's been touched by it. Nick's family's been touched by it. And at this point in time, I think it's best to send him well wishes and offer whatever type of help that we can. And Joe is here, and I know Joe is even closer to Nick than I am, but I kind of feel two ways about this. One way is that I've had a lot of people say, Nate, do a video on Nick, do a video on Nick. I generally would have never done a video on Nick. Like, even if this was somebody I didn't know, I wouldn't be doing a video on this, so I'm not going to do a video on it now, right? If this was somebody I didn't know, I wouldn't have done the video on it. But second, I just don't want to, he obviously needs help, and I don't think this is the right time to jump on someone's back when they are in this situation. So I hope all the best for Nick. I worry for his children and for these charges. And right now, I want to put everybody on the same page. These are just allegations. He could be totally innocent, right? And I also want to tell people from my perspective as a former assistant district attorney. People are saying he's going to go to jail. He's doing this. He's doing this. People, we got to calm down. Number one, he's not the first lawyer to have a substance abuse problem, right? So just if they kicked all lawyers out who use some type of drugs, there would be no law. There would essentially be almost no lawyers out there to represent people. This does happen. So it's not you lose your license forever type thing. Number two, even if the allegations, which are allegations now, are true, generally he's a first-time offender who's never been in trouble with the law. He was an upstanding citizen up until this particular point. Generally, that offers us some type of diversion program and, offers treatment. They're in Minnesota, for God's sakes, where where they're trying to, the tone of the criminal justice system now, especially with drug abuse, is rehabilitation, addiction, going to a program, get clean, this, and again, this will be a first-time offense. So anybody talking about he may be getting some serious jail time or something like, unless you're distributing the stuff, then that's what you're talking about. So, but again, from what I've been seeing online, because I am not within the case, it seems like that's where probably this is going to be going to, and I think it's going to be it's a horrible embarrassment to him and his brand But I think at the end of the day, if people start thinking about it rationally, this is somebody who obviously had a drug problem, obviously had an alcohol problem, obviously needs help. And sometimes you got to, the court tells you, you got no choice. You got to do it or you lose your freedom. And I think that's probably the more likely scenario that's going to happen with Nick if this all pans out the way I think it's going to pan out. But Joe's an attorney in New York. Joe, am I saying anything that doesn't make sense?
No, everything you're saying makes sense. Is my audio good? Because
yeah.
Yes,
first time offender and all that,
First time offender, like you said, relatively good reputation in the community. I say relatively because sometimes they'll deem him offensive, certainly in the Great White North of Middle America. But those who are interested about the potential outcome on his law license, I actually did some research into Minnesota bar discipline. And what I saw, at least I went back to, I think which showed at least in 2022, for example, that there was like 14 people who were disbarred, or 8 people disbarred and 14 people who were suspended. And the line that Minnesota seems to historically make, we don't know what's going to happen with Nick, but the line they seem to historically make is that if he were convicted of a felony, because it's not involving fraud or things of him taking money, a client, and it's an offense that's unrelated to the practice of law, and a person is convicted of a felony in Minnesota, it seems as if they get a suspension. Now, how long is suspension rather than disbarment? So I don't foresee that he's going to lose his law license, even if he did get some sort of level of felony conviction with perhaps some sort of program where it's like, he got released and perhaps be compelled to do community service of some kind. And assuming he has some sort of problem, which is an assumption everyone seems to be making, and we don't know that's true, but I mean, people have seen signs and speculated that that's likely true. We all saw that stream he did on Monday, and I said, that's not the Nick that I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like, unless he was doing a bit where he was imitating Dave Chappelle's, crack character, because he looked terrible. He looked terrible, and no one wants to see. No one who actually cares about Nick or loves Nick the way most of us do want to. We were all horrified to see that.
Joe, you're on the wrong mic, I think.
See, this is what I thought. I was trying to guess because
I can actually hear you,
Michael. Please don't do that.
We can actually hear you, but it does sound like you're on the wrong mic. Eric, I don't know if the arraignment's up now, but people are saying the arraignment's live.
Yeah, I'm trying to get to it, but the link died. So
maybe so many people are crashing into it.
You don't even hear me at all, man.
Yeah, we can hear you, Joe.
I can still hear you. Just hit the drop down next to the microphone and see if you can choose a different one.
I am. One.
But the way,
one here. Is this one right?
But just so everybody understands the way it generally goes, you get arrested. They have all these. The state charges you with the worst possible thing, right? It's murder, blah blah blah. Then not murder, but in this case, the worst possible offenses. You go in front of the judge. They'll say you complete these steps, programs, first time offender, pillar of the community, lawyer. You complete these things. Be a good person for a certain amount of time. These will be reduced to something minor, something light, just to give you a little spanking. Your law license will be suspended for a little bit of time, and then guess what? You'll go back into society and don't do it again. Because don't forget, this is somebody's first time having this interaction with the criminal justice system. He's not going to jail for 20 years. You know what I mean? That's what this is. Now, this is again with the caveat that what we see with the charges is all we see. I don't know if there's anything more there or anything more serious, but based on if this is only about drugs. If it's about something else, then there may be a little issue with that.
Yeah, Joe forgot to mute himself, but anyway, so wow, God, we're getting every microphone pickup in the world and crashing slates. So this is very interesting. I have looked to find the arraignment. I think it's timed out. MLS, who was supposed to be here, but he's streaming it there or whatever. I noticed that they're waiting as well. So that's have to stand by on that situation. One thing I plan to do on this stream, and leave it to me to be trying new things out all the time, but that's kind of what I do. I'm going to take some calls on locals because this is Rumble Studio. And Joe, can you mute or do? You're killing us.
I'm
How's
sorry.
my volume? Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I
Yes,
hear you.
yes.
Okay. Is that too loud?
Am I using the right mic?
No, not yet. Hit the drop down next to the microphone. There's a little arrow, and you should be able to select.
That's what I'm using. I'm jumping through. I have 4 different options.
I wanted to say that Joe's being like Norm right now, but I wanted to before I said that, I wanted to make sure everybody could hear me.
I don't know which mic to pick. I could either 4.
What options do you show?
I'm seeing default microphone, voice mod, virtual audio device, WDMI. Then I'm seeing microphone communications dash microphone, voice mod, virtual audio device, WDMI. I'm seeing microphone, USB, audio device.
USB. Do the USB.
Boy, I am right at home with this conversation.
Everyone told me I was on the wrong mic.
There it is.
Is this
That's
the Law
the one.
Legitimacy channel?
Well,
So
no,
this
he
is
was
good.
supposed to be here, and apparently he ran out of town too. So, but yeah, you're definitely sounding better. But what are you going to do? Entry required with a Rumble rant, I guess. This is new here because I can actually see chats from Rumble, from locals, and from YouTube all at the same time,
This is amazing.
which I do like. But boy, is it it's a little bit rough. So I'm going to add to the confusion and just let everybody know that on my locals, and you can go there if you wish. I'm going to take a call or two. I'm dropping the call-in link in the chat in locals because I know a lot of people feel really strongly about Nick. You know, we know Nick. Joe probably is closer to Nick than I think Nate or myself. It's a situation of, if I'm being perfectly honest, I like Nick. Nick has come on the stream. He enjoys it here. I've interviewed him, and I can text him from time to time, but I don't talk to Nick for weeks and weeks at a time. So I don't want to overplay or overstate what my relationship is. And I don't like it when people do that. He's a good guy. He's a good man. I think he's fallen on some hard times, but you know, he's always welcome.
Hey, is
And
there
I'm
private chat
super-
in here?
There is no private chat, it appears, which is kind of frustrating.
I'm gonna send you the link there because he's on now getting it right. So I'll send you the.
Okay,
link.
MLS or
Yeah.
the okay,
MLS
cool.
got it.
Where do you send stuff to each other here?
Unfortunately, you can't in this. There's no private chat, so this is fun. I am literally on the bleeding edge here. They've said this is out of beta. I consider this still to be a beta product in many ways. However, you know, it'll never improve unless people try. And
Yeah, check your
is it text or Twitter?
Twitter. Check
Oh,
Twitter DMs.
Twitter. Okay, cool. Let me copy the link, and then we can.
Matter of fact, you know, but then after we do this whole Nick stuff, I'm not, and just for everybody knows, I'm not
Jesus.
talking about Nick again. After this show, I'm done with it. I'm not talking. You know, it just is what it is. You know, I'm not
I
getting to
have
any
a
of this
lot
stuff.
to say though. Just kidding.
After, yeah, you could say all you want now.
No, just joking. I don't know Nick. Haven't had the pleasure, so I have nothing to offer.
4.02, subdivision 5 at Prin 5. I need to tell everyone that a violation of that rule could lead to contempt proceedings. We are on the record
People are
in
joining.
34 CR.
For the record, I have an email.
1 and
This
Madam
is sort
Clerk,
of
if you can
Inception.
Disable that the buzzing or bell noise each time someone joins us. Court would appreciate that. This is the state of Minnesota versus Nicholas Robert Rekieta.
So many
Am I saying
people
that
are
correctly?
joining.
You've told me before.
There's gonna be thousands.
I have your date of birth is December 16, 1981.
he's gonna really hate that. Ding 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 ding.
Oh, yeah.
Currently
It's gonna
reside
go
at
bonkers.
12291.
You said your Zoom link wasn't working, huh?
I'll try it again, but
Okay. Your appearance today is based on 3 counts to a complaint order for detention. The record should reflect that Alex Kornahachi appears for the state of Minnesota. Mr. Rekieta, you are self-representing yourself at this point?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Count 1 is second-degree possession, 25 grams or more of cocaine or methamphetamine. This is in violation of Minnesota Statute 152.022, subdivision 2, print A, print 1. The maximum sentence for that count is 25 years in prison and/or a $500,000 fine. Count 2 is possession of ammunition or any firearm with the user of controlled substances. This is a gross misdemeanor, so the maximum sentence is 364 days in the Candioi County Jail and/or a $3,000 fine. Count 3, endangerment of a child when present with a sale or possession of a controlled substance. Again, a gross misdemeanor. Maximum sentence.
Get all your coke out, Nick, and kill yourself, you stupid motherfucker.
What?
People able to talk in there?
This is a court proceeding. If you were in a courtroom with me,
Yeah.
it would remove you. So,
Wow.
That's unbelievable.
any
Judge,
violation of
Stupid
that will be
people.
removed.
What
Block.
assholes?
Yeah, but they should
Judge,
protect
I
it when
just
nobody can.
disabled people the ability to unmute themselves, so
Yeah.
I will work to unmute people as they need to speak to the court this morning.
All right, thank you. Aside from Mr. Rekieta and Mr. Kornahachi, 54 days and/or $3,000 fine. Mr. Rekieta, you understand what you've been charged with, and second question, the maximum sentences associated with each count.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Now, I
Okay,
don't
you guys
mean to
seeing that a
insult
little
your
cleaner now?
intelligence, given
Sorry
you
about that.
are an attorney, but it's important that I know that you understand your rights here. First of all, you are presumed to be not guilty of these charges. It is the state, not you, that has to prove what has been alleged in the complaint with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. You have a right to trial by jury. All members of the jury would have to agree that the state had met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt before you could be convicted. You have a right to counsel. You have a right to represent yourself, of course. If there's a trial, you could give your side of the story and testify, but you also have a right to remain silent. Indeed, you don't have to prove anything, so you don't have to say anything. If you remain silent, the judge can't make a comment about that. The prosecutor can't make a comment about that, nor can the jury take that into consideration. You have a right to confront, challenge, or cross-examine anyone who testifies against your interest. You have a right to call witnesses and the power of subpoena. You have a right to all of the state's discovery before trial, and including exculpatory information and evidence. And at the end of the day, if you think the court made some mistakes or a jury made some mistakes, you have a right to appeal. Any questions about those rights as I've explained them?
No, Your Honor.
This is a Rule 5 hearing. Sometimes we call it a bail hearing. We'll set this for a Rule 8 hearing. Under the rules, you have the right to have that hearing within 14 days of today's hearing, but you could waive that as well, given
Can you make him large?
your right to seek counsel if you so choose. Do you want this scheduled within 14 days, a Rule 8?
No, Your Honor, I'd like to waive that. We can combine it into a contested omnibus hearing. That would work.
All right, so we could, for today's purposes, combine Rule 5, Rule 8?
Yes, sir.
All right. And before you ask for a speedy, you want to hear what the state is requesting as
Yes,
far as
hear what the
release
state is
conditions?
Yes, I'd like to hear what the state is requesting.
I didn't say it, but you also have the right to have me read the complaint today.
No, I'll waive that right, sir.
All right, very well.
He doesn't
Mr.
want it read.
Konahashi, what
Yeah, I
is the
won't
state
want it read either.
requesting as far as release conditions?
Yes, Your Honor. The state is requesting $50,000 unconditional. In the alternative, we would agree to RPR with standard drug conditions, which would include no use, random testing, no use and possession of firearms, contact probation as directed, Don't leave the state without permission from the court. Remain law-abiding. Keep in contact with probation and other standard conditions.
Hey, Eric, can you double
Mr.
click on
Rekieta,
Nick
any
so we can
objection
just
to those
see Nick?
conditions?
I object to the $50,000 bail. I think it's unduly burdensome and in violation of the Eighth Amendment.
All right, what about the conditions?
Release conditions sound fine.
Never mind that.
All right, the court will set unconditionally amount of $50,000, cash or bond. Conditionally, you'll be released in your own personal
There we go.
recognizance. In all instances, you need to be law-abiding and show up for all your court appearances. Conditions are as follow: abstain from the use of alcohol or any mood-altering chemicals not prescribed by your physician.
Can't drink.
That will be subject to random testing. So the court will order that you meet with probation upon your release, sign their agreement, and cooperate fully. You're not to possess any weapons, firearms of any nature, or be in the presence of anyone with a firearm or dangerous weapon. And do not leave the state of Minnesota without prior approval of the court. Any questions about those release conditions?
Yes, Your Honor. Did you say 50 or 15,000?
50000. 50.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, let me ask this. Do you still want a speedy omnibus, or can it be scheduled in normal course?
You scheduled in normal course, Your Honor.
Very well. Madam Clerk, do we have a date for that?
I'm sorry, Judge, I'm just going to interrupt. This is Katie Block, the court administrator. Do you want this next hearing to be in person or remote?
In person.
Thank you for the clarification.
Mr. Rekieta, you said contested, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so yes, in person.
And I'm sorry, Your Honor, just to clarify, timelines are waived?
Yes.
Wow, he's caught with some weight because they're talking about 20 years.
And Madam Clerk, just so the court is aware, Kristen Pierce is handling this case going forward.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this was me when I was at the DA's office. I was a shit DA that did arraignments. I was like, yeah, so this other person's handled it, but I had to do the stupid arraignments. I did a hit mail one time, which was pretty interesting.
Oh, wow.
And the matter has been assigned with Judge Fisher. I'm looking at Tuesday, August 20th at 2:45.
Good for the state.
They must have did
Without
his
having a calendar, sounds great.
not guilty plea now.
Very well. Any other business we can conduct?
Now,
Yes,
if you have this,
Oh.
apologies. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I have requested to see two of my clients and have been forbidden from doing so. I would like to see them before their arraignment.
So he's representing, I believe, his
I'm
wife
not
and
understanding your request.
the
Can you repeat it?
other
As
woman.
two of my clients are set for arraignment today, I have requested to see them. They have both requested to speak to their attorney, who is me, and they have been prevented from doing so up to this point. I was wondering if we could get an order to allow me to at least speak to my clients before they come into their first appearance.
What a fascinating.
Bernacchi?
Your Honor, I'm not sure if the court is aware. April Multi has been released.
Oh,
So she's already been released.
And then I believe the other person who's referring to is his wife, Kayla. Is it Rekieta?
Rekieta.
Rekieta. I'll leave it to the court's discretion.
Isn't that a conflict?
They are
Co-defendant?
charged as co-defendants.
This would be a
I believe
conflict
they would
if
have
they
to-
allege co-defendant.
She would have to waive any conflict, etc. But I don't take a
Definitely.
position.
If you're overrested
Yeah.
with the same charge, there's a
and
conflict there.
To be frank, I don't know if that's a waivable conflict at
Yeah, I
this
don't
point.
think you can waive it.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the integration
Given
of
they are
spousal privilege there as
co-defendants,
well.
Yeah.
but there's no request from
Yeah.
the state that obviously they are married, so there's no request that they be separated. True.
Correct.
Well, it's an issue of denying counsel to Ms. Rekieta, so I will grant the request and leave that as an issue for Judge Fisher.
I like this.
So
Yeah.
Plus, he's got a great haircut.
At least to get us through
Amazing
the arraignment
haircut.
this morning.
Sensational, man.
Mr. Jailer, are you able to make accommodations? Mr. Rekieta, how much time?
There's
do
a
you
hell of
need?
a conflict there. I don't know how you can do this.
No, just about 15 minutes, Your Honor.
I
We'll talk
don't
about
know.
that. We'll talk
Can
about
the
that.
jail accommodate that?
That'd be up to the jail administrator, Your Honor.
I'm sorry?
I would have to talk with the jail administrator.
All right. If they have any difficulties with that, the jail administrator, since I'll be in these proceedings, should contact Chief Judge Beckman.
Thank you, Your Honor.
This doesn't sound
Thank
right.
you.
Honestly.
We'll talk in a minute. We'll talk in a minute.
Since Ms.
My take on
Rekieta
this
is not
that he wants
available,
to
at least
talk
for the
to
next
his wife,
15
at least
minutes,
temporarily, and then if they
do
engage outside
we
counsel,
want to take the next matter?
Fine with the state, Your Honor.
Do we
So-
want to interpret the case next?
So she's probably going to be
Which
arraigned in
case?
15 minutes. He's going to talk to her now 15 minutes, and we can talk about
Sure.
this
Yeah.
conflict of interest
Thank you, Your Honor.
issue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, the reason why I'm kind of confused by this, and I'll keep
Yeah,
watching.
why don't we mute them?
Yeah, you can mute
for
that.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
let me
we
find
can
it.
talk about this situation. I think the judge here was eminently fair. I mean, the $50,000 sounds very high, for first offense, and it's not violent. It's not violent related. Oh my God, can you mute that?
I'm trying, dude. Chill.
Oh, okay, sorry.
You were hanging on the
Like, oh my
desk and
God.
scratching my ears and everything else, but now we're worried. Come on now.
Well, first, just
I
so
forgot
first,
it's a new
let's
system.
let everybody
Yeah.
know what's going on. Number one, so Nick has pleaded obviously not guilty to the charges, and he's facing a maximum of 20 years for felony possession of controlled substances, which they said is cocaine or something other similar to that. He also has 2 misdemeanor charges that they also are charging him with, and that's essentially because he was found with drugs. And if you're found with ammo and firearms, that also leads to another charge. So he's being charged with those things too. Nick is representing himself, and he's also representing his wife and the babysitter. And Joe's going to talk about the conflict. They set his bail at $50,000 cash or bond, meaning he can go to a bail bondsman, pay the $5,000. That won't be returned. He can get out with some collateral, or he can just put up $50,000 himself. As long as he continues to go to court, he'll get that money back minus fees or whatever that he'd have to pay to the court. Is there anything else I missed?
Well, my question is this about the conflict, and definitely please jump in. I would worry about a co-defendant and a lawyer when both are being charged. I mean, technically, we don't want the 2 co-defendants, like if they're arrested, talking to each other to get their story straight, so to speak. So isn't this kind of an
There's a
issue?
third, the third variable there to me is just the spousal privilege to be asserted by each of them in due course if they're required to testify, right? So to me, I don't know that Nick is necessarily intending to be his wife's defense attorney for the duration of the proceedings. It would at least be for the initial 15 minutes here, Joe, you were just talking about, at least insofar as he can communicate to her exactly what he has done and what he would advise her to do. And then he can remove that sort of issue before the court by them engaging outside counsel after the fact.
Yeah, I think that there's a number of different issues that are obviously going on here. We have to have concerns. We have a husband and wife who are both charged together. They're both co-defendants. You have to sort of, for a moment, start by looking at them as completely separate from each other and recognize that frequently defendants can find their own exoneration by pointing the finger at the other one. So
Joe,
when one of them is...
Question here. Are the charges the exact same for both of them?
From what I saw, yes.
Yes.
Well, it
For
looks like
those
it's just
2,
the same.
April, the third defendant, was only drug charges. So Kayla and Nick are drugs and a firearm enhancement, if you will, or whatever it was added on. And then April, who's already been released, was drugs only.
And I think it's important to note this is all the same transaction. This wasn't like different transactions, all in the same transaction.
Right. Although it's interesting that she was arraigned an hour and a half after him. It was that April was arraigned at 10:03. He was arraigned at 10:08 in the morning, and she was arraigned like at 11:30. I don't know if they went back and got her, and at some point I don't know what happened.
Alphabetical?
No, it doesn't make sense because there was only 3 of them. According to recent bookings recentlybooked.com.
No, their last names. She's an I, they're an R. I mean, maybe it was something that
he was within 5 minutes of April, and his wife was an hour and a half later.
Okay. When
April was arraigned at 10:03. April, the nanny was arraigned at 10:03. Nick was arraigned at 10:08.
Arraigned or arrested? I'm confused.
I'm sorry, she was booked. They were booked at 10:03.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you for correcting that. My brain was locking. Yes, April was booked at 10:03. Nick was booked at 10:08. Kayla was booked at 11:30. So it's a little bit strange that it's almost as if the cops went back and got Kayla.
Or I could be wrong on this, but from what I understand from April's husband, the children have been placed with the family. So is it possible, Nate, and you could speak to this, that they might have held Kayla back to put the kids with somebody else, and then once the arrangements were made, the children were cared for, then they went ahead and booked her? I don't know.
That makes a lot of sense as far as how it possibly could have happened. That she could have said, look, my parents live 10 minutes away, because she lives relatively close to her folks. That's why they live in that town. So she could say, my parents are 10 minutes away. Let me take my kids over to my parents, explain to them what's going on, or get them to come here, depending, whatever. But the point is, this way, their care can be in the custody of someone who knows them, loves them, and this could be cause as little disruption as possible in their lives. And then that they would take her in to be booked. So that's a great I didn't think of that explanation, but to me that's a very logical way for this entire thing to have transpired. And that would explain that they were all going to be arrested at the same time and booked, one right after the other, and that's why there's that gap there in between, that perhaps some officers stayed behind with Kayla while she was making arrangements for the kids. So that does make sense. I think this conflict of interest issue and how the judge and the court is handling it is really interesting, because on the one hand, as I was starting to explain earlier, there's this thought that defendants, we look at them separately. We have to assume that one way that defendants can frequently find their salvation in the eyes of the law is by pointing the finger at their co-defendant. And that happens frequently between spouses even. Spouses can point their fingers at each other. And how would she point the finger at Nick if he's her lawyer? That doesn't really add up. On the other hand, at this stage of the proceedings, is it not better for her to have some legal guidance rather than none? So you can and she also, she has a right to counsel. Does it not make sense to say, okay, let's sort out the legality of this issue and what can happen going forward, but just for the purposes of her initial arraignment and how that would be handled, for her to be able to talk to him, even if there's a conflict, she's likely not going to be pointing the finger at him today. That's not something that would. So I think that she's probably better off having counsel, even if it's someone who is necessarily conflicted in legal and with their respective legal interests. But that's having that counsel, certainly to me, it makes sense for the judge to say, okay, for the purposes of arraignment, I'll allow you to do this. Going forward, we'll see whether or not I'll allow you to continue. And I doubt that they would, even as a husband and wife. They'll still be able to talk to each other. The state seems okay with that. But go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, no. Well,
you know better than I do. You know the prosecutorial system better than I do. So
there are just two things. The dichotomy here isn't Nick's her lawyer or she doesn't have a lawyer. It's going to be Nick's her lawyer or she can have a public defender temporarily until she can purchase her own lawyer, right? You're going to have they're going to have. So when I was at the DA's office, at the DA, they had a well of public defenders who would sit there and everybody was in like, do you have a lawyer right now? No. This will be your lawyer for this arraignment, right? So True. Nick is going in and saying, I want to be her lawyer. Now, I'm saying this is totally conflicted out. If I was a judge, I would say no. That's inappropriate at this time. You're arrested for the same transaction at the same time for the same particular charges, right? And the fact that Joe's 100% correct, you have to treat her as a defendant, him as a defendant. Now, she can at arraignment plead guilty. People do go to arraignment because I used to do it. Here's a deal. You do blah, 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 plead guilty, and you're good. And she could plead guilty, right? She can go in there, I want to plead guilty. that may hurt his case. So that's generally why they wouldn't allow them to do that. And I think there may be one big issue here is the crime fraud exception for both the marital privilege and because let's not forget they're being charged with essentially the same crime. So
I don't see it as too big of an issue because what I think is likely to happen, Rekieta is a huge figure online, right? How many people are streaming about this right now, right? How many people are watching this stream in particular?
Right now, almost 2,500 are watching this.
So what I think is likely the strategy from Nick's side, which I think is really clever, is that he ensures that she knows the process that he just went through, how to answer at what points, right? To assert certain things the very brief arguments that he made in terms of setting the bond, the conditions of release, that sort of stuff. And at the point that they are both back on the outside together, at that point, they are going to be solicited by a number of criminal defense attorneys that would be willing to take this case for perhaps a little bit less money than they otherwise would because of the exposure it's going to get. I mean, look at what we're doing right now. So I don't think that, the judge to me made the correct decision. This is, they can plead guilty at any point going forward, but they, so them asserting not guilty now doesn't mean that they won't at a certain point have an opportunity to work with, the district attorney or whatever to submit a plea. And to the extent that he's there and able to at least advise her as to how to conduct herself or what to expect, it's a minimal intrusion. We won't even get to I don't think that we'll ever even get to the conflict of him representing her for the substantive merits of the litigation at all. I think that this is probably just to ensure that his wife can get on the outside, they can reconvene, and then more patiently and more methodically choose to engage outside counsel to lob the defense.
Yeah, I can see that. I don't know. I've been, because every time I've seen it happen where both the attorney got arrested with the client and same issues, and it's always the same thing. You got to have separate representation. And this is a very unique case where the person who's actually arrested being arraigned is now saying, I represent my other co-defendants. I don't know. It's a tough conflict to crack.
Let's assume Kayla would say, no, I only want Nick to be my lawyer. I don't want to have
she can sign off on the conflict.
So I think the judge is anticipating that she likely will do that, and that's why he was saying, is that waivable? In other words, he was sort of addressing an anticipation that she would wish to waive it, and then the question is it waivable? And that, I'm sure this has come up before. I mean, this can't be the first time it's come up in Minnesota state history. So,
what is sure to not have occurred is somebody with this level of online visibility doing this. And I think this is a fascinating moment for, just in terms of legal analysis. Have we ever seen anything like this?
No.
It really, I mean, this is sort of that's why I said it's a fascinating fact pattern now that he has asserted that he intends to represent at least one of the other co-defendants, if not both, and even temporarily so. That judge was ill-equipped, in my opinion, and that's not even a knock on him. But what decision would any of us have made in that moment, right?
Well, personally, I would have said, well, I'm, because of the obvious, I would say, the apparent conflict, the obvious conflict, I think at this particular moment for the arraignment, we'll get, again, I know they have to have PDs there, public defenders there. We'll just have a public defender just go through the arraignment with you. That person will tell you all these steps that you need to hear. And then when you're released, if you're released and whatever, then you could decide if you want to go to the public defender, that. But right now, for this particular moment, I would like just to have it clean, because again, if this conflict is not waivable, if somebody comes back and says this conflict is not waivable, then we got to do this whole arraignment again, right? So it's kind of like that type of scenario. So.
All right, I'm going to do something really quickly, which I hate to say in the spirit of Nick, but it's in the spirit of Nick. One of the features of Rumble Studio I've been given early access to is campaigns. So Rumble is allowing sponsorship for channels through Rumble Studio that they partnered up. And I'm going to do a sponsor read now. I've never done one, never done one here. I don't know how it works. So everybody's going to be learning this at the same time. But this sponsor lines up kind of well. They're actually Minneapolis or Minnesota-based news channel. So
I just want to ask you real quick: are you monitoring the Kayla arraignment so that we can?
I have it in the background. There's another defendant right now, or another individual. That's why I wanted to
make sure we didn't miss that.
That's why I wanted to do this now to get that in there. And let's see. I don't know how this works, but all right. It's award-winning investigative journalist, Alpha News journalist Liz Collins sets the record straight about. She uncovers what really happened on Chicago Avenue and exposes the truth of the 2020 riots. Based on conversations with those who were there, including Derek Chauvin, Thomas Lane, and other Minneapolis police officers who have never spoken out before, Liz exposes how the facts were manipulated to dupe and divide America. And this is Alpha News, Fall of Minneapolis. You might want to check it out. And thank you for sponsoring. All right, well, we'll see how that goes. This is a very informal test of the sponsorship. Now, I want to let everybody else know that there is an issue where I think the chat is overwhelming Rumble Studio. It stopped working 18 minutes ago, and there are some super chats on YouTube that I see in here that I will have to just go over and read outright. I won't be able to bring them up on the screen like I did the Rumble rant earlier. All these things I'm screenshotting and noting. By the way, do you call them defendants? The people who are being arraigned? What are they?
They are defendants, yeah.
Okay, there's another defendant there who's not Kayla. So I just want to let everybody know, if they're wondering in the background, what's going on with the arraignment. But
And just FYI too, the big number of the 20 facing 20 years, that's, it's like with the Varsity Blues. Remember with the actress who's paying to get her kids in USC? They'll give you those big numbers. She could have faced 50 years in prison, but eventually she got 6 months. Because those big, so it all depends on circumstances and what have you. So I don't think he's going to get 20 years for this, but
it's a negotiation, right? Isn't it, where they're saying, here you go, you can get up to this, so you better plea it down. Is that the idea behind it? Like, could he potentially face fewer charges, or both of them? Let's say if they go and check into rehab right now and maybe get cleaned up before the trial, would that be of assistance to them?
Yeah,
they'll put
you on a version program. Say, okay, instead of the felony, we'll get you with another misdemeanor. You plead guilty to this, blah blah blah. And sometimes they'll give you like what's known as a conditional discharge. If you're good for 6 months or a year or whatever, then it'll be dismissed and you won't have a criminal record. But again, I don't know, Minnesota, but that's generally the way it does in New York. Because again, he's not the first lawyer that this has happened to, and he's not going to be the last. So,
well, I hate to say it. I've been very concerned about the guy. We've seen the videos. He did not look healthy. And there's a big part of me is saying, hopefully this will help him. In the end, maybe this is bottom. Maybe this will enable him to get clean, because Nick is the most amazing, dynamic person, completely generous. I don't think folks understand. Part of the reason so many people are upset is because Nick is a good guy. We know that this isn't normal for him, and again, I'm personally hoping that maybe this saved his life.
And that's how I'm choosing to look at it also. That I'm hopeful that he can work something out with the state on these charges, whereby he does get into some sort of program, and that whatever help he needs, he and his wife can get, and that this could hopefully spur him back into being the Nick that we all remember. I mean, let's face it. I mean, a lot of people were speculating about his hand motions in that awful Monday stream. If you were watching Nick during this hearing, he seemed to have the same hand tremor. He wasn't doing, it might not have been as pronounced as it was on the Monday night stream, but I think this sort of, everyone's speculating that he was engaging in some sort of lewd behavior on camera. And I think that it's very evident that the same hand was just tremoling. And, I think that that's indicative of someone who's been abusing narcotics. And
he probably does need medical help immediately. And I'm pointing this out, especially, I don't know if anybody here has heard of Amy Winehouse, the artist. She died at the age of 27, but it wasn't of alcoholism. It was from alcohol withdrawal. So I believe it or not, there is an issue with that. And if he is having an extreme problem where he's getting to the DTs or the shakes or things like that, he really probably should get medical care so he could be observed by a doctor and they could, do whatever and observe him. Again, I'm very concerned about the guy's health. And
we all are.
And I understand what you're saying. Really, the stream was just awful. Whatever was happening, it was just awful. It was obviously that he needed help. I did not expect this to occur. And apparently it was not even that stream that led to this. I have to question Minnesota a little bit, but the report was taken May 16th. And I do wonder if somebody's reported on May 16th, it takes you a week to go check. Now, I'm sorry, if there was something really bad going on and there was some kind of welfare check needed, a week? Am I reading that wrong?
But you know what? I don't want to defend the state on this one, but don't forget Nick had already been the victim of multiple calls of abuse from before and the swatting incidents. So they had a kind of a history of, hey, it's probably, because I'm assuming
false alarms.
Here's another this fucking guy again.
Wolf.
Yeah.
And that could be what they were like, yeah, okay.
So they probably
we'll run this one up the flagpole also. Do you understand anything about what he was saying about the gun charges? Because when I was reading the gun charges, and I'm asking you because you have history in criminal prosecution. So when I was looking at the gun charges, to me, it looked as if they were saying, because the state believes that he's engaged in drug use, that now becomes an unlawful for him to possess, and they're looking to seize his guns. Not that it's a separate charge that could lead to additional jail time, but it's just a matter of in other words, the question I'm really having is just trying to piece together from the very little information that we have so far, because he wisely waived his rights rather than having that reading go out across to millions of people. He waived his rights to have it read. So we have very limited information right now. And with the gun charges, a lot of people speculated that maybe there was some sort of hostile contact, not shooting, but that there was some sort of, that he was waving a gun around his kids while he was coked up or something like that. I saw people raising that speculation.
From what I understand, it's a Minnesota law that if you commit a felony and you are in possession of a firearm, no matter what it is, it's just tacked on. So he happened to have, I think it was at his house, he had firearms at his house. They found drugs, so they just lumped it together. That's why April didn't get it and they got it, because it was their house. And I don't even know if he had the gun on him. It could be that they just went through the house, they found guns, and they said, okay, add this on because there are guns on the premises, and just add it to the charge. That's what I understand it possibly is.
That's what I suspected. Because I'll tell you right now, it's actually Minnesota. He's charged with Minnesota Statute 624.713, Section 10, and I can pull this up on screen if I can. Can I share my screen here?
We could try.
All right, we'll try this out here.
I don't know.
So I just tried sharing it.
Gentlemen, I'm gonna bow out. I don't have a lot here to offer. Don't know the way that you guys do, but definitely don't want to take up the airtime here. So thank you, Eric. See you guys next week, probably.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for coming,
Michael. You're awesome. Take care,
brother. Michael.
See you guys.
Are you able to see this screen?
Okay, hold on. I was just checking. There was another defendant. I'm trying to keep up with the other things going on.
Just so for those of you who bought firearms in the United States, when they have you sign all those waivers, and one of the particular things they say is you cannot use if you are using drugs or ever begin to use drugs later, you must turn over these firearms. You can't possess firearms if you're and to Hunter Biden. Remember, Hunter Biden was addicted to drugs and bought a firearm, and then they charged him with that crime. So that's essentially what it is. If you have drugs in the house or whatever, and you have firearms, it tacks on together.
Okay. And by the way, the $50,000 that he's forced to pay, that's for himself. We can expect that there'll be another $50,000 for Kayla. So he's looking at having to come up with $100,000.
Well, maybe it's less for her. It was only $10,000 for April. I'd have to look and see what it is. It
and you can bail bonds it out 2 for 10. It's 5 for him, 5 for her. Give the 10%.
Right. So this is the Minnesota statute that I saw him being charged with. This is certain persons not to possess firearms. And he's specifically charged, I'll make this a little bigger. He's specifically charged with Section 10, subsection 3, which if you go to that, what it says is that, and this is, it starts by basically saying that the following person shall not be entitled to possess ammunition or a pistol or semi-automatic military-style assault weapon, except for clause 1 for any other firearm. And then it says, in section 10, it's a person who is an unlawful user of any controlled substance as defined in chapter 152, that's what he and Kayla charged with. Which would be, we're not going to do this to people who are being hit with marijuana charges, but it's specifically for
they exclude
drugs.
Marijuana. They actually excluded it. I think
so that's the point I was making. So if it's basically actual drugs that's under Minnesota statute, they can take your guns away. And I think unlawful user means not as opposed to convicted, because the other portions of these are people who have been convicted. This is unlawful user. So even though he is obviously he's a long way from being convicted of anything, that it could be that just the charges alone in Minnesota's eyes justify taking away his weapons. And I think that's probably why he was charged with that, is because Minnesota, the state wants to seize his guns.
Yeah. If you have drugs, then you can't have guns. If you're using drugs, you can't have guns.
Right. Even if you're not convicted, that's my point.
Even if you're not convicted, yep.
So I think that's what I understand that charge. But I saw other people claiming that he can be hit with an additional 5 years for the gun related issues, and I don't believe that that's true. I was just hoping I can get your opinion on that.
Yeah, it's a misdemeanor. The judge said it's a gross misdemeanor. Gross misdemeanor means is that you can get up to a year in prison. I think his biggest issue is going to be the felony with the 25 grams.
Yeah, obviously. So
I think also too, which I'm kind of reluctant to say, but there may be some child endangerment issues here too, and stuff. You got guns and drugs in the house. Sometimes the state will go after that, but I don't think that's on the table now. But I remember we saw some documents that did allude to that, but it doesn't seem like the state's going to go after that, which is a break for Nick.
Yeah, it is a break for him.
Also,
go ahead.
With the whole representing his wife and the other young lady, the suspension for his license, that's coming down the pipe, right?
Right. That's probably going to happen. Which would also, by the way, although I don't think that would happen until he got convicted. I don't think that will be something that will be factored by the court that, he's suspended, he can't represent her. But I cannot foresee that this thing would go to trial and that he'd be able to represent her. I'm wondering strategically, just out of the interest of the kids, if he's going to, if he can't plead to something that's going to allow for their release, I'm wondering if he falls on a sword for her.
You know what I just realized? I guess I'm so I've had to look back at the chat on the other screen because the chat's completely stopped in this tool. But everybody's saying April got off scot-free. I think that April flipped. I think it's very possible that they're just going to use her to get charges against the other two, and then boom. Nate, correct me if I'm wrong. You're a cop. Would that be a prosecutor? Is that possible?
I think that's too presumptuous. Number one, this just happened yesterday. Just got arrested yesterday. She wasn't charged with a lot of the stuff that he was charged with. They were charged with the misdemeanors and the felony, which she was probably only charged with the felony. And I think 10,000. And from what I'm understanding, the situation is the reason why they're charged with the gun, because it was their house, their guns, their house, their drugs, and I think she was just there. So it makes sense that she would probably get a lower bail amount and a lower thing because her situation, I think her circumstances are just different. But flipping, I think that's just too early. Because again, just so be clear, I don't want us to put this in the realm of Nick being guilty and having to prove his innocence. Right now, Nick is technically innocent.
I agree.
And the state has to kind of prove his guilt. So
right. So having a witness is not unheard of. To when you have a third party who doesn't live there, and that person is willing. Like there was a question whether she would get bail or not. I mean, did she have the money to get herself out? Was she released on her own recognizance? You know, did they change on the bail? I don't know. And again, I don't know any of that. That's true, but I'm just saying it seems possible.
Yeah, but in a case like this, though, maybe it's possible, but I think it's just unlikely because I think Nick deals with these type of cases, and that's the good part about Nick practicing it. He deals with these type of cases. He knows all the lingo, so I think he knows
the judge.
He knows where to pull the angles here. So we'll see.
Let me go through some super chats that are here. Thank God YouTube does have a fan funding thing. Robbie McCann said earlier for $4.99. Thank you very much. Yes, he can be very arrogant. Come right down to it. He's not a bad person. All this shows is that Nick too is human. He got the wake up call he needed. I hope he did. Viden the cold one with $1. Thank you. Stephen Cooper said Fisher was his Monty judge that he was bad mouthing. Oh
my God.
Oh, Jesus. If that's bad. Robbie McCann said, and remember, a little compassion never hurt no one. I agree, Robbie. And then Ramble Gamble said, it's important that you guys do this. It undercuts hater channels from growing off this. A friendly channel is a better outlet for the interest in it. And
that's a great point.
I agree, and I want to address that slightly. Obscure Destinations Outdoors is joined up as a member, so thank you very much. That was something that I kind of wanted to talk about, but I hate to in some ways, but I do feel like there are people, and I'm not going to name them and shame them directly, but they've been monetizing the downfall of Nick Rekieta for a while, and I don't love YouTube drama at all. I understand it gets clicks, it gets money. I get all that, but it's always bothered me a lot. And I do hope that the channels that have been, shall we say, documenting what's been going on with Nick will maybe think about it and maybe start to look at the situation and maybe be a little more healthy. What do you guys think about that? I mean, I don't know.
It's a pipe dream. I think that these people are envious of his success. They feel like they're rationalized with some sort of basis to go after him, claiming that either because he's actually mean and he's really a jerk, or that he hasn't lived up to the ideals that he espoused, which is an interesting philosophical discussion as to like someone who, let's say, is espousing very healthy ideals, which is part of the reason that he became as popular as he did, the significant part of it, that and his remarkable talent. Mm-hmm. So I think that they sort of judge him more harshly, like because they believe him to be either a hypocrite or something of that nature, and they expect that because he's espousing healthy ideals, that if they ever see him failing in their vision to live up to those ideals, that they have a right to cast him out and should bring him down. And I think that's all that righteous indignation is crap.
It is a fair criticism. I mean, it is a fair. I'm not
saying that the criticism could not be levied. I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm not saying the criticism could not be levied, but for someone to actually make a living off of doing that day after day after day, that's not reflective of an issue with Nick. That's reflective of someone who has a deep issues inside. I think these people they're sick. And I don't mean sick. I mean sick, like literally like there's something wrong with you if you're getting your jollies by seeing someone who's never harmed you and has been, and you used to be a fan of, and now all of a sudden it's like you're getting your jollies from seeing his fall from grace. I think it's gross. I think it's one of the grossest things imaginable. So,
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I'm kind of proud that my language doesn't have the word Schadenfreude. That that you have to go to another language to get the exact term, but that's what that is, a Schadenfreude. I believe, drawing joy from that. But some are drawing joy and profit. But I do want to address it. Say, Nick needs help, and Nick did. It is hypocritical. I'm sure Nick would be the first one to say that. I'm not trying to trumpet on it, but I don't want to overlook this. And I'm just hoping that he can look at this, and this is the wake up call. I mean, there are other people. My partner on America's Untold Stories, Mark, is a drug counselor, and he's I'm looking forward to talking with Mark offline about this, most likely, because again, I'm really torn about this. I'm reporting it because it's happening, but I don't like talking about it now. As a matter of fact, while we're waiting for Kayla's
arraignment,
Nate was telling me about a story, and I thought, maybe we actually can cover a news story that isn't Nick, and that's kind of the purpose of this channel. But he was on the phone with me yesterday. He told me the story, and it was mind-blowing what was going on. Let me go find the local news clip on it.
All right. I'll explain to everyone what's happening, essentially. So if you're an illegal alien and you come to the United States, or now I can't call them
undocumented
aliens,
immigrant, I think is the popular term.
Yes.
Hold on. Here, I've got the video. Let's see if we can do it. Oh. All right. Let's see. This interface, boy, I've got a lot of notes for them.
Oh, there it is.
All right, let's see here.
Says a string of fake robberies staged so that the purported victims could get visas led to a man being killed by a bystander.
Now, we told you about this in January, that deadly shooting on Ella Boulevard. Well, it's a story that you'll only see here on Fox. And Fox 26's Abigail Dye spoke with the fiancé of the man who died.
Okay, well, actually, Nate, you go and explain it, and then we'll go to her comments, and then we can go back and forth on that.
All right, sure. So the issue that's been going on is that if you're an illegal immigrant, you can there are fast tracks to get permanent, well, not permanent status, but legal status here in the United States. Some of those shortcuts are like the 90-day fiance phenomenon. You marry American citizens, 90 days, you can get your paperwork. One of those fast tracks is also known as the U visa program. And the U visa program, if you are a victim of a serious crime, like a felony, then what happens is the government says, well, since you've been a crime in the United States of a felony of the serious crime, you can get your lawful paperwork faster. By applying for a U visa.
Okay, so here we go. There's something called the Cobra effect, and the Cobra effect is something that happened in. Oh shoot, I've got to go over. Sorry, we'll get back to this and presentation.
Oh, see there she is.
Oh, come on, unmute.
All right, we are on the record in court file 34 CR 24 342. It's the state of Minnesota versus Kayla Christine Rekieta. You are Ms. Rekieta?
Yes.
All right. We've had some trouble hearing everyone this morning, so if you could get a little closer to the microphone and speak a little louder. Your appearance today is based on a complaint order for detention with 3 counts. I have your date of birth as March 9, 1984.
Yes, sir.
All right. The record should also reflect that Alex Kornahachi appears for the state of Minnesota. Ms. Rekieta, your current address. And Mr. Rekieta lives there as well. He's also a co-defendant with you.
Yes, sir.
And he would get his mail there as well.
Yes, sir.
Count 1 is second-degree possession of 25 grams or more of cocaine or methamphetamine. This has been charged out as a felony, so the maximum sentence is 25 years in prison and/or a $500,000 fine. Offense date was May 23rd, 2024. Count 2 is possession of ammunition or a firearm by a user of a controlled substance in violation of Minnesota Statute 624.713 at subdivision 1. This is a gross misdemeanor, so the maximum sentence is 364 days and or a $3,000 fine. And then lastly, count 3, neglect or endangerment of a child. Again, a gross misdemeanor, maximum sentence 364 days and or a $3,000 fine. First question is, do you understand what you've been charged with?
I understand, yes.
All right. And the maximum penalties associated with each offense or each count.
Yes, sir.
All right. When someone has been accused of an offense such as this, it's important that you understand your rights. Starting point is that you are presumed to be not guilty. You don't have to prove your innocence, rather the state has to prove your guilt, and they have to do so with evidence beyond a reasonable doubt. 2, you're entitled to counsel, legal counsel, and if you can't afford it and an attorney, the court would appoint one for you. 3, you're entitled to trial by jury if you so choose. If there's a trial, all members of the jury would have to agree that the state had met its burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt before you could be convicted. If there's a trial, you could give your side of the story if you wish, but you don't have to because you have a right to remain silent. Indeed, you don't have to prove anything, so you don't have to say anything. If you remain silent and don't testify, the judge and the prosecutor cannot make comments about that because it is your constitutional right, nor can the jury consider it. You have a right to confront, challenge, or cross-examine any witness who testifies against your interest. You have a right to call witnesses and the power of subpoena to force witnesses to come and testify on your behalf. You have a right to receive all of the state's evidence and information, including exculpatory information before trial. And at the end of the day, if you think the judge or the jury made some mistakes, you have the right of appeal. Do you have any questions about those rights this morning?
No, I do not.
You have a right also to have me read the complaint to you. If you read it or you're able to read it, you can waive that right. Do you need for me to read it to you?
Not at this time, no.
Very well. Any objection
Nick told her
to setting these hearings tracking your husband's case? Or would you want a separate hearing?
I think I would like this tracking his.
Very well. We will set those and track at the same time. You can change your mind if you'd like. This is sometimes called a bail hearing, and you would come back for an arraignment. We combine those hearings for Mr. Rekieta. Do you want to do the same thing and then just set this for a contested omnibus? That's a yes?
Yes, please.
You're nodding, but you're yes?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Cornhachi, does the state have any release conditions?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor. We would ask for the same conditions as Nicholas Rekieta, $50,000 unconditional,
Right.
and the alternative RPR standard conditions.
charges,
If the
that
court
makes
would like, I
sense.
can repeat the conditions I had asked for.
You're going to have to. I threw it away. So
No problem. So that would be no use of controlled substances or alcohol, random testing, no use or possession of firearms, contact probation as directed, don't leave the state without permission, remain law-abiding, and other standard conditions.
Ms. Rekieta, any objection?
No.
Very well. Court will order unconditionally amount of $50,000 cash or bond. Conditionally, you'll be released on your own personal recognizance. But in all instances, you have to remain law-abiding and show up for your court appearances, and we'll give you that date shortly. It'll also be noted on this release order. You are to abstain from the use of alcohol or any mood-altering chemicals not prescribed by your physician. That will be subject to random testing, so I'll have you report to probation, sign their agreement, and cooperate fully, which means keeping in contact with the pretrial probation agent. You are not to possess any firearms, ammunition, or dangerous weapons, and don't leave the state of Minnesota without prior approval of the court. Any questions about any of that?
No, sir. Understood.
Madam Clerk?
Your Honor, that is August 20th at 2:45.
All right. And that's all from the Candy. All right. Is that all from the Candiac County Jail?
That's all we have, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Candiac County Jail signing up.
All right. So
I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I think we got to lock Nick up, yo.
Damn. They still screaming about Nick.
Yeah. These people
The trolls are crazy.
yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Oh boy. Oh boy. Yeah, it is. It is. You know, I kind of wonder too. You know, but because Nick's in such a awkward position on this. His livelihood is being public. It is streaming. It's doing a show, and now I don't know if he can just easily take a break. You guys know better than I do, but he has a contract with Rumble. I don't know if
his
that's going to be a
contract is
problem.
still. I don't know if he's still under contract. That was a 1-year deal that I'm pretty sure was more than a year ago. I haven't asked him about the status of his contract, but I don't know that he's actually still under contract with Rumble. And the number of shows that he's been doing over the last couple of weeks leads me to believe that I don't think he's still under contract. He always. My thoughts about this is that I'm hopeful that this is the nadir for him, and the one thing I've seen about Nick Rekieta is that he has incredible strength and a deep love for his children, and I think that this hopefully is going to be a wake-up call for him. It's that the arc of his story, which started from nothing, rose up to prominence, and now has sunk down into depths no one ever foresaw. I actually think he has the capacity, and he's in certain ways uniquely situated to rise back up to an even greater height.
The redemption arc.
The redemption arc. Yeah, exactly.
I'm
the
all
redemption
for it.
arc.
I'm here for it.
And I think that he's intelligent enough and understands the situation well enough to recognize that, you know, he's at a crossroads right here and now. This is it. This is your crossroads. You can either use this as a wake-up call and say, you know, F the drugs and the alcohol and put that to the side and actually go on a redemption arc, you know, and be the father that we all know he always wants to be. And I'm certainly not casting judgment about anything in the past, but certainly he's made mistakes. I'm sure he would recognize that, but actually be able to be there for his kids rather than risking their development because of these habits that he's formed for himself. And I really believe that we will see that redemption from him, and I'm looking forward to seeing that from him. This is a rough day for anyone who cares about Nick Rekieta, but I think that, you know, it's only the redemption arc can only come if you hit an nadir, and I'm hoping that this is the bottom of the barrel for him. Unfortunately, for some people, that actually they sink lower than this. I don't foresee that for him. I really foresee for him that he's actually going to start righting this ship. Because I do think I know he loves his kids. I know he loves them dearly, and that it's really important to him that they grow up to be healthy. And he recognizes the significance and importance of his duty to help them in that development. So
could I
go for it?
Take this. I don't want to be a school marm either, but I'm concerned too that, and some of this isn't just Nick, it's kind of led outside of Nick. There has been a propensity on streams for people to get paid to drink. And I would love to get your opinions on this, but I'm kind of hoping that maybe this is an example, and we can look at that practice and question whether whether it really truly is a good practice to get money to drink like that when it could ultimately help lead to this type of situation. And I would love to get both your thoughts.
I'll let Nate weigh in first on that.
So ask the question one more time.
There's a lot of drinking stories, and some of this kind of spawned out of Nick. But people will send in super chats for shots, and the grift and the drinking, and it's something that has concerned me for a while. And again, I don't want to be a school marm, but it bothers me, and I don't know if this isn't maybe an example or a counterpoint to that.
I honestly, everything's within moderation, right? It's like if you are doing those type of streams, I've done drinking streams before, but I don't get fall down drunk. It's I think it's all in moderation, right? If you're doing it once in a while, just have a celebration, that's fine. But I think if you're doing it like Nick was doing it every single day, that I think is the problem. So I drinking is legal.
But he didn't do it every single day, and that's all I'm trying to say. This is something that's
Nick was getting drunk every night. That was
ultimately, but we're talking over a period of years here. We've known Nick for a while, and Nick in Rittenhouse, like I said in the intro, that's with Joe, right? I mean, that happened to be an off night, and he was drinking, but Nick was
that was not an off night. I mean, what you have clipped there was actually something I called him up, and that goes back 2.5 years. And that incident, I actually texted him and I asked him about the idea of sharing a drinking stream where I had recently started live streaming. And I said, we'll start and we'll basically take on my stream, like for every $100, we'll take a shot, and on your stream for every 200, because he was making more. And we'll have a drinking stream, and we'll start 2 hours on my stream and then switch over to your stream for 3 hours. This way we both can make some money off of it. And the intention was to get drunk that night. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that once in a while, especially if you're predetermining that that's going to be the case. I personally had a situation 2 summers ago where my family was up in the mountains, and someone came along who was paying me $200 a shot, and decided, and they had a lot of money, and they said, I want to buy 10 shots from you one night, and just dropped on me $2,000 in Venmo. And I was like, all right, let's go. And then the next night did it again, and the shots increased. And basically I went through a period of like a week and a half where I was making a hell of a lot more money during that time than I ever had before, and getting drunk. And I was actually pretty good at holding my alcohol and not looking like, not doing anything that was embarrassing. If anything, my wife thinks I'm more entertaining when I'm drunk. So, but at a certain point I was like, I don't know if this is healthy. Like, I had concerns about what I'm doing to myself. And I was like, I've been doing it for like a week and a half. And I called a friend of mine and I said, and I asked him, am I a prostitute? That's sort of like, I sort of like asked like whether, if I'm being now compelled to take a drink every time I get $200 from someone, am I now prostituting myself? And I was like, look, I don't know that it's prostitution, but it's too close to it. I sort of drew an analogy that I was like, if someone came along to me and said that they're getting paid money by someone to do something that they're really not in the mood to do, and then it's not a terrible thing, but that they really wouldn't do, but they're just doing it because of the money, and it's mildly degrading, is that prostitution? And I would be like, I don't know that it's prostitution, but it's walking down that road. So I said, and because of that, I called, my friend said, you have to stop this tonight, Joe. Like, not even, I was like, maybe one more night, I'll make another 3. He's like, no, tonight. And I did. And I called the guy who had been sponsoring all this. And I said to him, look, I know you mean well for the show, but like, I just think that I don't want this to become who I am, like my image. I don't want this to be, like, people are going to start looking at me as the drunk lawyer. And I'm just I don't want that to be what I become. And I don't like the idea that I'm sending a potential message to people that it's okay to degrade yourself for money, even though it's not really degrading. Like I said, I didn't humiliate myself. It's not like I was like, doing anything terrible, but And I explained that to him first, and then I explained to the audience that I don't think he did anything wrong, and I don't think I did anything wrong. It just gives a very bad message, and that's really, and that's. But at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, if it's something that you're allowing your audience to sort of dictate the terms in that sense, even begrudgingly going along with it, I don't think that's a healthy thing in general. I don't think he's been doing that. I don't think he's been looking at it that way. And I don't think that he has been felt compelled at all. I think that he enjoys drinking, and I think he felt like it's innocent. And I think that, I don't know that it's really the alcohol per se, to say that the alcohol is what did it. Maybe the introduction of drugs over the last year or two.
It could be anything, and I'm not. And again, I said I wasn't trying to be a schoolmarm. Of course, people
you're not.
Eric the dictator, and it's like, I do a stream every Saturday, and I have a beer on it. Sometimes I have two.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, when we have something like this going on, and that actually is a thing that is happening in LawTube, I feel like it has to be at least acknowledged that there is that kind of thing. It happens. There are opinions on it. It's legal. Everybody's of drinking age. They're an adult, whatever. But I just felt like I should address it, or at least acknowledge it. And again,
I think it's a healthy thing to sort of recognize. I had the good fortune that I had a friend standing on the outside who was like, no, you're not doing this. And that's sort of like, and someone who's, a friend from the time I'm 20 years old, who is basically, yelling at me, like, I'm not going to do this even one more night. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is something I don't want this to become who I am. I'll tell you this much. He really has an opportunity to take this as a basis to sort of change his direction in how he handles his show. And I hope he does, because I want nothing but amazing things to happen for him. I want him to go to 10 million subs and become the biggest podcaster out there, because I know that he's a good person, he's uniquely talented, and he has such a great heart and insight in how he expresses himself with his creativity and with a very base take, like night after night. And I think that, it's possible he strayed away from that, or maybe his fans felt he strayed away from that. And hopefully this is a wake up call, which I'm really confident. I cannot foresee him ignoring this wake up call. I can't even imagine it. That's why I'm really confident it will happen. And right now we're during the period of his life when he's at his nadir. That I am so confident that he will. Could I be wrong? Yeah, I could be wrong. I don't know. No one knows the future, but I'm very confident that this will be a healthy wake-up call for him, and I'm looking forward to that.
Fair enough. I am as well. I mean, I'm all for that. That's what I want. I mean, we love watching Nick. It wasn't just not only as a friend, but as a fan.
Yeah.
I haven't watched it for a long time.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel like, I feel like he wasn't really doing legal content. He sort of was doing like edgelord stuff or something, and it's like, okay, that's a different type
genre
of show.
Right.
Yeah, I'm just not as into it. I'm more into obviously what we're doing here. Let me go through some more super chats that came in. Bill Potter said, "Why would one take so much risk when people have been swatting you? Just a matter of time before they show up when you have everything out to be seen."
I gotta fly out of here, but I just wanted to blessings to you both, Nick and his children, his family, and everyone should use this as a cautionary tale that the snake can bite anyone. So
I think we're all going to get out of here.
I think we're wrapping up as well. I'm going to do live super chats and go. No, that's fine.
Okay. No, I'll stick that out.
C. Goody said the vultures are so numerous they've blackened out the sky. Thank you for not being one of them. Thank you. I kind of hate even getting super chats on this. Anyway, it's so freaking awkward. Just Rhonda, all I need to say is, out of all the garbage being streamed, I appreciate what all of you are doing. Thanks, Joe, Eric, Nate, for being classy and sensitive. We're trying to. Thank you. And then Pam Running says, if anyone's in touch with Nick, please let him know how many people are pulling for him and his family. And that's that. As I said before, I don't feel close enough to Nick, because I feel like my reaching out right now directly would be inappropriate. I am doing it here, and I'm saying that I'm here for him. but I am not as close, and I don't want it to be like, he gets out, he's doing this, and all of a sudden, I don't want to be one of the people that's like, hey Nick, hey Nick, hey Nick. I want to give the guy his space personally, and I think that people who are closer to him are going to be reaching out to him. I don't know, but do you guys have any thoughts about that?
They have been.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right. I know several people. I know several people who have, who are fairly close, people that you've seen on stream, who I've streamed with each of them at some point, and there have been conversations about what we can do to make Nick be Nick again. So
fair enough, and that's I think that's the perfect ending point. We're cheering for Nick. We want to watch the redemption story. I can't wait to see it, and it's going to be fantastic. So, everybody, thank you very much. We're not going to go through the routine. I'm not cutting anybody off. I'm just going to end the stream, and please, everybody, keep Nick and his family in your thoughts. There's 5 children, and he has a lot of work ahead of him, and hopefully he's successful. So thank you again, everybody. We'll see you next time.